Why are these books here? The Thatcher book, the Ronald Reagan book?
Well, these
coincidence or special meaning?
Well, this is our headquarters, so these aren't my...
It's all conceptual, I assume.
Yes, it is more conceptual, but I have this one. I do actually have a copy of that. I read it...
Is it the Moore book or...?
No, no, that's not the... Or is that the Moore one?
I don't know. I can see it from here.
I can't see it either.
Okay.
I do have... Charles has given me a copy.
Yeah.
I haven't read his. But the one I have, which I read a long time ago, was Statecraft, which I think now is the time I need to read it again.
Did you see the film?
No.
There is a biopic on
was this the Meryl Streep one?
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't like it.
No,
I did. I thought it was portraying her in a very negative way, in my view. And also, I remember Meryl Streep won the Oscar for that portrayal, and she didn't thank Margaret Thatcher, who was still alive at the time, at least certainly not to my recollection. And I thought that was interesting. But I also believe that Hollywood culture is very left, and most of them just have this caricatured view of people on the right. It probably never occurred to her to even say, what an inspirational woman, the first, real female leader the West had seen. And she will always be an icon for that reason.
Is she your number one role model in a way?
In many ways, because I'm doing the job that she did. Leader of the opposition was when Margaret Thatcher sort of really started to reshape the narrative about the right, certainly in British politics. And she had a similar circumstance to me, in the sense that people thought the party wasn't going anywhere. A lot of people don't remember at the time there was this guy called Jeremy Thorpe, and he was taking her donors, and people thought that Jeremy Thorpe looked like the kind of man who really should be Tory leader, and this woman was just there as a placewoman. But she changed the party completely. She showed that you can do things in a different way, and I have to show that my party is now under new management. We went along with things which other leaders wanted. Now the party is going in the direction that I want to take it. Very firmly on the center right, but showing people how this is how you create, the wealth, the value in the country that's actually going to keep us growing, how we stay together, build the social cohesion. I think only the center right has the answers for the 21st century.
Kemi, as the leader of the Conservative Party, what does conservatism mean to you today?
So conservatism means protecting the very best of what makes a society great and making sure that you can hand it to the next generation. So for me, the operative verb is to conserve. What are we conserving? What are the things that are good? And it's about the values, the institutions, those two things together. For me, the primary value that sets conservatism apart from other political ideologies is personal responsibility. Whenever I see other parties doing things that I don't like, almost always you can see that it's them believing that central planning, big government, more officials, perhaps a technocracy are what will fix these issues. Quite often, personal responsibility, self-reliance, first and foremost. That's what helps. And then it gives you the space to help the really vulnerable, provide the safety net. But if the personal responsibility isn't there, if there's too much government, then you won't be able to do the things that you want to do to look after those who can't support themselves.
Preserving things is, of course, essential for the idea of conservatism. On the other hand, it is very much about change. How much change does conservatism need today?
Well, conservatism, when done properly, adapts well to change. The Conservative Party is the most successful political party, certainly in Western democracy. Over 200 years, you can see how we have evolved and adapted. You must have evolution. You must have adaptation. Too often people think that the evolution is about moving left. It's not. It's often renewal of values that have been forgotten.
But the question is this kind of step-by-step change and adaptation enough in times where we have so many existential challenges, and where we also have to, in a way, acknowledge that conservatism, centrist conservatism, is not doing so well all around the world, and particularly including in the United Kingdom?
Well, I think it's because we have seen a pastiche of conservatism try and take over. This sort of what I call sort of economic nationalism, populism, it presents itself as conservatism, but it's not the conservatism that I recognize. And you're absolutely right. There are changes that are happening in the world which could be existential. Other countries competing. You look at what China is doing, even the way the Gulf is changing in terms of its outlook. Russia, again, deciding that its imperial ambitions need to be revived. You look on the technology side. It's not just AI. It's just the prevalence of mobile phones and social media. We've had in this country recent looting, organized with children on social media, these link-ups, things that they couldn't do before. How do we deal with that in the modern age? And it's about going back to those values. So this morning, I've been doing interviews talking about enforcement, that if you don't enforce the laws that you have, then people will learn that bad behavior goes unpunished. You'll get more bad behavior. It's not about making more and more laws. This is my problem with the left in our country. They are constantly making more rules, more regulations instead of enforcing.
Yeah, but I would be interested how much and how fast you want to change. How much change do we need? I mean, the idea of Edmund Burke was, in contrast to the French Revolution, that we only have step-by-step change. And my feeling is that given the circumstances, that may just not be enough at the moment.
So make haste slowly is the phrase which I like. I come from an engineering background. Sometimes you have to deliver a project quickly, but that means thinking smartly, better resources, and focusing on what needs to be delivered early on. You can't fix everything at the same time quickly. You can fix some things quickly, so you start with what is most urgent. And I believe that we do need to move quickly in this country. I want to see, while I'm not a revolutionary, we do need an economic revolution. Certainly in Western Europe, the UK, so exposed to a lot of the problems we're seeing now, oil price shocks, etc. You see the inflation figures, you look at our GDP per capita, the problems with migration. We have to be bold on the economy. But that means allowing the people who create the value to do what they need to do.
Conservative thinking and conservative parties used to be challenged mainly by the left. That has changed. It is now mainly challenged by the right, all around the world, in Europe, and particularly here in England. The Tories are not leading in the polls. Reform is leading. Why is that? What did the conservatives do wrong?
So you're right. Conservatism is being challenged more by the right now, the economic nationalists, the populists. But I don't think that it's going to be long lasting. I mean, you only need to look at Hungary. You look at what's happened to Orban, to Fidesz. I think that if you're unable to deliver growth, whatever your ideology is, it will lose. Conservatism was not delivering enough growth, partly because we talked right but governed left. Actually, you saw an expansion in the regulatory state. You saw an expansion in the size of the state and the number of things the government was dipping its fingers into, an increase in taxes. COVID, pretty much changed the mindset of an entire country to believe that the government's going to fix all your problems. Everybody's going to stay at home. We're going to all, and if you can't work, we'll pay all your salaries, as if there were no consequences coming. And there were consequences. We saw the spike in inflation. We saw, an increase in people going on welfare. It's turning into a disaster. Those things need to be fixed. The economic revolution is what I'm offering, but I need to make sure that the plans will stand up to scrutiny. What I'm not going to do is just announce things and then they get torn apart. When I announce things, people know it's solid, no U-turns. That's the difference between us and reform.
So the election in Hungary is for you encouraging because you see that as a kind of renaissance of centrist conservatism, or what is it for you?
I think when you see these elections, everybody wants to read their own. Everybody wants to read their own thing into a result. I think the fact that Peter, is it Magyar?
Magyar.
Yes. That he was someone who was actually very much of the right, in some places even tougher, shows that this wasn't a left versus right issue, but this was probably what I would call more traditional centre-right economics and ideology reasserting itself. I think that's very positive. He is talking again about growth. Orban was not able to deliver growth. Hungary was wealthier than Poland back in 2010. Poland is now catching up to the UK, something which I think is an example of how a country is doing the right things. The UK is doing the wrong things. Hungary was also doing the wrong things. So I think that there is a reassertion of the centre-right when done properly. Yeah. You do have to show you love your country. You do have to be patriotic. You have to be strong, and you have to show how you will be strong. It's not just rhetoric. There's too much rhetoric in politics.
But talking about the mistakes in this country, they are not only made by Labour. They were made for many, many years by the Conservative Party. And even a core topic that is probably the most emotional topic, migration, uncontrolled migration, was worse under Conservative leadership because migration figures were mounting.
So this is one of the things that I try to explain to people about why we lost the election. That if you make promises and you don't deliver on those promises, the electorate punishes you very hard. We went into elections promising to reduce migration and then
did the opposite.
Well, it was just left to officials.
Yeah.
So most ministers were saying we're going to reduce migration and then tell civil servants reduce immigration and then hope that it would be done. You need ministers who know how to run things. Quite often you get people complaining, oh, this person's stopping me, I'm not able to do this. There is a lot of incompetence, which is something that I'm driving out of the party. A lot of the people who actually made mistakes have left, they're gone. The party's under new management. But if you want to control immigration, that needs to be a policy that runs across all departments. You would have the Home Office saying we're trying to reduce immigration. And then another department, agriculture, says, oh, we need agricultural workers. And the health department would say we need social care workers, we need more nurses, more doctors. And then someone else said, well, they need to bring their families in. And then there's a war in Ukraine. Hong Kong is having a problem. If you are not very focused on an issue and you just leave it to technocrats, you will run into problems. And this has caused us a lot of issues now. And I now have new policies. We're going to leave the ECHR, for example, because we tried to carry out deportations. We couldn't do so. We did every single thing, constantly thwarted by lawfare. That's where. So now we've just got to do the thing that is most critical, ECHR. That's where we're leaving.
Would you say that the rise of far-right populist conservative parties in Europe, mainly in Germany with the AfD, or in France with Le Pen, and here in England with Reform, is because the centrist conservative parties shifted too far to the left?
I think that I don't know enough about the other countries. I wouldn't call Reform far right. They are, because there are a lot of things that they do that are left, in terms of big state. But certainly the challenge to the right that has come from failures of the centre right. There was a complacency. I look at people like Angela Merkel, for example.
Do you think she was the reason or a reason why AfD in Germany, for example, could develop?
I think there was a lot of complacency. That invitation to 1 million Syrian migrants to Germany was one of the reasons why people became more skeptical about the European Union project. It was one of the triggers for Brexit. Certainly, I wasn't even an MP at the time, but I was thinking about this in terms of what does citizenship mean if any country can do this?
That's interesting that you're saying that she was one of the triggers for Brexit. I thought that it was really in that situation that everybody looked to this policy, to this migration policy, and said, so if that's EU, I don't want to have anything to do with it. And that literally was one of the main reasons, perhaps even for Brexit, migration and the negative role model of Germany representing the EU.
I think it was a huge, huge part of it. And even the politicians here who were pushing Brexit were not necessarily alive to that. Some were, but not all of them. So the people voting to leave the European Union in this country were leaving for all sorts of different reasons. Some for sovereignty, some for deregulation, some for immigration. But the strategy was not clear enough, which is why afterwards it went all over the place. But complacency it has been Europe's biggest disease. Complacency that America will come in and carry out our security for us. Complacency that everybody coming into Europe just wants to work and join us and be happy with us. Complacency that we're always going to be wealthy. This complacency has been eating at the heart of all of Western Europe. And I am a realist. I am not complacent at all.
Okay, but even if Brexit happened for good reasons, so far it's not a big success. I mean, if you look at the figures, the key metrics, there is a competition who is degrading faster, continental Europe or England. So why didn't it work?
Well, because there was no strategy for using the opportunity. So much political capital and energy was spent on leaving that how to make sure leaving was a success became secondary, I'd say even tertiary. And the worst thing that happened to Brexit, remember we left 31st of January 2020, was COVID happening 2 months later. And pretty much anything that was constructive and positive that people were planning in terms of seizing the opportunities took a backseat to paying welfare, paying furlough, looking after citizens, spending a lot of money, which could have been spent elsewhere, and then triggering inflation, which was then exacerbated by a war in Ukraine. So it never really got going. So I find it very frustrating when people say Brexit has not been a success. There are a lot of terrible statistics out there which are actually untrue. But the opportunities are yet to be seized. When I was Trade Secretary, I signed a Trans-Pacific Partnership, 12 countries from Japan, Canada, Mexico, Singapore, Malaysia. There are things to be done. They're not being done. How do you reduce trade barriers? How do you make sure that your market is working? How do you create, an environment where people want to invest? None of those things are being done. And if you were not planning to do those things on leaving the European Union, then there's no point in leaving. That's why I want Keir Starmer to seize those opportunities. Instead, he's talking about dynamic alignment, which is just lazy. It means I don't have any ideas of my own, so I'm just going to copy what the EU is doing. That is not what the UK needs right now. The UK should be setting an example for Europe. Here's what to do. We have a lot of people who can get this economy going gangbusters. What we don't need are loads of people in the cabinet who've never had proper jobs or run businesses or even worked in the private sector telling actual business people what to do. That is not how to get a successful Brexit. Not at all.
I mean, I'm a political outsider to the English political landscape, but the numbers of the polls for the local elections do not look good for the Conservative Party. Farage is leading. And it seems to me that it is a difficult task to define a precise reason why to really go for conservative and not for reform, which seems to have the easier answers on the pressing issues. So perhaps could you define that a little bit more concretely, what really distinguishes you from the disruptive effort that Nigel Farage is promising?
So yes, Nigel Farage is certainly a disruptor, but what the country needs right now is bold, thoughtful revolution. We are the thoughtful right.
Aha, now you're speaking about revolution.
Well, on the economy,
preservation.
Yes, but you can have both. If you do it carefully, you can have both. Economic revolution is needed, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I am screaming at the Prime Minister to drill our own oil and gas in the North Sea. This is something that will be huge for the economy. And he has an old mindset that believes that if you just put lots of wind farms out there, everything will be fine. Wind farms that are basically supplied by China. This is not serious. But you asked about what is the difference between us and reform. We are the thoughtful right. They are unthinking. I mean, to use the Orban example, he took pensions, he redirected pensions to invest in a way that was actually very bad for the economy. Reform has the same policy. They want to take local government pensions and then get it directed by the state into what to invest in. These things make people poorer. A lot of money was lost in Hungary. That's what reform is offering again as part of its economic policy. You look at the councils they've taken over. They went into Kent saying they were we're going to have a Doge. Do you remember? No one talks about Doge anymore. We're going to have a Doge. We're going to find savings. They had not actually looked at what was wrong. They just came out with a solution. They got there and they saw the problem was not waste or savings. The Conservatives who were there were actually running the council very well. Now they've whacked up taxes when they said they were going to cut taxes. They've increased them. They've had lots of people leaving their party. They're hiring, staff, getting themselves more parking spaces and things like that. All this sort of self-interest rather than public interest. It is chaos. We are not going to do that. And I'm not here to say Conservatives were perfect before. I am here to clean up the mess that was made. I am fixing my party. It's under new management. It does take time. What reform does not have is the baggage of the past, but that's because they don't know how to do anything. A lot of the people they've taken from the Conservative Party are the people who caused the problems. So I tell people that Nigel Farage is doing my spring cleaning. A lot of the incompetent people, the people who failed, blaming everybody left, right and centre, they have gone to reform. We're not about blaming up and down. We're about taking responsibility. Conservative Party takes responsibility for mistakes that it made, but we don't have a time machine. Nobody does. What are we going to do for the future? So my offer is, let's start by helping business create growth. Let's get rid of business rates on the high street. Let's cut VAT off energy bills, and let's use the money that's being spent on net zero, a disastrous project that's actually deindustrializing this country, and put it where we can, really turbocharge growth.
Next to the economy, I think still migration is one of the most pressing issues. And I would be curious to hear very concretely how you want to handle that. What is the concept of the Conservative Party going forward?
Okay. So on immigration, this is one of the areas where we have a lot of work to do to fix our reputation. We used to be good on managing immigration, but the complacency and the distraction meant that we just weren't looking at what was happening. We actually started bringing immigration down under Rishi Sunak, James Cleverly as Home Secretary. Immigration started coming down. We put in some reforms. It's not enough. Labour are not serious. The biggest thing we need to deal with is the small boats crisis. We have a lot of people, a lot of dangerous people coming here on small boats. We have been unable to deport them because our courts have gold-plated the Convention on Human Rights. We need to leave the Convention on Human Rights. It's a tough thing. We have a plan about how we're going to manage that. It's not just leaving and hoping it'll be okay. We've got a comprehensive borders plan that's about returns, visa sanctions, our immigration tribunals, looking at a new borders force. Not the one that we've got at the moment, but a removals force that will actually take people out. But leaving the ECHR is going to be essential, but it's not alone. It's not a silver bullet. The rest of the borders plan will help to fix that. But we have to be tough on immigration. Yeah. And I think as someone who comes from an immigrant background myself, it's easier for me sometimes to be able to say we are losing the thing that made this country special. The thing that made lots of people want to come here will disappear if we do not enforce a single shared identity around being British, around what that means, and making sure that while we accommodate minority communities and minority faiths, they do not start to dominate what it is we are trying to share as that special British identity. We are a home. We're not a hotel or a dormitory where everybody can come in and do what they like.
We see disturbing pictures from the streets of London where demonstrations that pretend to be anti-Israel are in the end simply anti-Semitic. It seems that there is a large degree of imported anti-Semitism that may have also unlocked existing anti-Semitism. In any case, it is particularly within younger cohorts, almost a new zeitgeist. What would you do in order to change that fundamentally?
So I am very shocked at the level of discrimination, attacks and prejudice that's being directed at Jews in this country at the moment. I say this as a Black woman. I have never had the kinds of things which I'm seeing Jewish people experience. This smashing up of shops, knocking on people's doors, demanding to know if they will boycott Israel. I can't imagine if people were destroying, African shops or Asian shops, it would be a scandal. There is a problem. Some of it has come from abroad, not all of it. A lot of it is just deeply embedded in a lot of hard left Marxist sort of traditions, which have reached a critical mass because they've had some newcomers join them in what they were doing. But it would be wrong to say all of this anti-Semitism is coming from foreign countries. Some of the worst extremism, the people attacking synagogues and burning ambulances, yes. So what are we going to do about it? We need to be very clear that this is something we don't stand for. A lot of those marches are covers for intimidation. They are not protests. We need to ban some of them. We need more powers to do that. But we also need to expel people from this country who do not belong here, who are promoting these things. We need to remove some people in public institutions who carry out very naked, open anti-Semitism. You have doctors and medical staff promoting on social media that they won't treat Jews. It has to start from the top. You need strong leadership pushing it out.
So you would say, concretely expressed, anti-Semitism is a reason to deport people?
I think so, yes, because they are the sorts of people who will end up, literally, anything that's inciting violence against Jews. That sort of thing has got to go. There has been a sort of looking away or pretending it's about Israel. It's being used as a cover. The anti-Zionism being used as a cover for anti-Semitism.
The Greens are saying,
very honest about that.
The Greens are saying Zionism is racism, which is racism.
A lot of this is just nonsense. There is a worrying level of historical illiteracy across the world right now. How Israel was created, what exactly happened. I talk to young people now, they don't know anything about Munich and, the killing of Israeli athletes. They think everything is about the Iranian-sponsored propaganda, which they're seeing. October 7th for them was not the trigger, but the war that started afterwards, a lot of historical illiteracy.
October 7 is almost forgotten. On TikTok, it doesn't exist any longer.
Well, I think that this war in Iran was started, you can argue it was started on October 7th. Iranian proxies, Hamas, going into Israel, murdering people, massacre, taking hostages, some for years, babies killed. That was the beginning of all of this. And their proxies, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, people need to see that this is all one grand strategy and not treat it as tiny little pockets of different pieces of discord. That's not right.
Nevertheless, more and more governments in Europe are saying this is not our war. Also, the English government is not going to help the Americans in that conflict. You have just recently announced a big investment into defense, and that is, of course, clearly in the context of the current wars. Could you explain a little bit your concept in order to convince young people that we are all agreeing that war is a terrible thing and we should all do everything to avoid it. But unfortunately, wars are started by bad actors, by dictators and autocrats. And at the moment, that has happened on many levels. And we have to find an answer. So what is the answer that you want to find in order to convince young people that they don't go with the Greens, who become more and more develop a movement where sustainability is marrying anti-Semitism?
They're not even talking about the sustainability anymore. It is just a cover for hard left, Marxism, which we're all very familiar with. And my message to young people is look at how we were so successful. And it was by making sure that the soft power was backed with hard power. It was about unleashing, the animal spirits of the people, letting them be creative and innovative. It wasn't about the government going in, tinkering with every single thing. And you need to look at the real history of your country. So many young people are being taught this false history of Europe, of the West, about how it's also oppressive and terrible. Oppression was all over the world. But actually, the beacon of light, in my view, came from the Enlightenment values, a lot of those liberal values from the 18th and 19th century, which spread around the world. And yes, of course, no one is saying imperialism or colonialism is a good thing. But the fact is, every country was at it. Every country was trying to be dominant. But the way that we have found a broad level of peace across the globe was actually with the promotion of Western values. And those values can only be promoted with strength. It's not just about having lots of meetings and saying be nice to ethnic minorities and LGBT people. It's about making sure that you back your positive, progressive values with strong, hard power. That's the only way.
But you think that this kind of Churchillian moment that you start or try to create now, that is a compelling proposal for young people?
I think so, but you have to show how it is good for them. I'm not here to give lectures to young people. I think it's very patronizing when people give lectures to young people. But, I talk about the New Deal the Conservatives have for young people. I don't think the system has been that fair. I mean, I'm 46, relatively young, compared to a lot of world leaders who are in their 80s or their 70s or even 60s. I look at Keir Starmer and Nigel Farage. They are a different generation from mine. I'm just on the cusp of millennials, and the deal that previous generations got was better. We have to make sure that young people feel that they are also getting a better deal. I'm very worried about this trend where people believe that what happened post the war was an anomaly, and the things that the baby boom generation enjoyed were a one-off. We can create this again, but we need a new deal for young people, less intergenerational unfairness. If they see that it's too hard for them to buy a house, and then they see lots of pensioners going on holiday with multiple houses, they will think the system is unfair. We need to show them how it can be fair. But it's not the billionaires or, the immigrants that have stolen that. It's the complacency. It is a cultural complacency that needs to be fixed. Yes, we need to make sure that people pay their taxes. Yes, we need to make sure that people who should not be in this country are deported or not let in. But overall, it is about creating that next level of inheritance, that next generation of inheritance for young people. That's the New Deal.
But if you take your main kind of claim here seriously, bullets, not benefits, then that goes way beyond a defense investment. It is a very conceptual claim because it also questions a whole system of social welfare that is dysfunctional and that is not just.
So we need to make sure that welfare is a safety net, not a lifestyle. Welfare should be there for those people who are unable to work, the most vulnerable, the disabled. We have a lot of people who are now on welfare who can work. They are choosing not to work. I want to make sure that we have enough money for those very vulnerable, very disabled, very old, for example, not for people who are old enough to be working and who should be working. That is a real problem. The number of people, when we left office just after COVID, 2,000 new people each day were claiming out of work benefits. So not disability or anything like that. Today, that number is 5,000 new people. Since Labour came in, 5,000 new people each day claiming out of work benefits. And we have seen a scandal in the conditions that many people are claiming these benefits for. It's not just I can't find a job. It's I'm too anxious to work or I'm too depressed to work. We need to help those people, but sometimes work is the thing that will help fix those things. So making sure that people understand that welfare cannot be a lifestyle, it should be a safety net, is important. We used to spend £1 in every £7 on welfare. Now we spend £1 in every £3. The money that used to go into defense has basically gone to welfare. It's making us weaker. If we're not careful, we will not even be able to afford the welfare at the rate we're going. We're now effectively borrowing to pay welfare.
So you're basically saying that's a dysfunctional system, and here again, it needs a revolution, not an evolution.
Yes, definitely. When it comes to welfare, it does need a revolution, but we need to make sure people who need these things don't feel that we're taking them away from them. I want
those who are abusing the system.
This is what a lot of my politics is about. It goes back to the personal responsibility the point that I was making earlier about personal responsibility. People need to start making sure that they can look after themselves and their families, not look to get from the system or abuse the system because it will destroy the system.
I believe you that you want to change it, but Can you change it?
Yes. It starts with people. We lost a lot of people at the last election. So my party is 25% new already, brand new people who are conviction politicians. But also we are going to recruit good people, not the career politicians who they want to be members of parliament because they think it's a nice job to have, but people who want to help with that economic revolution. And also, to a large extent, a cultural revolution where we start to really emphasize that we are one country with shared values, not a balkanization of the UK. Do not want to see that. But it can be done. Previous oppositions have taken 18 years, 14 years, 13 years. We're going to do this in 4 years because of the political fragmentation. It can be done, but you need to make sure you have a clear plan and, a North Star. This is where we're going. Right now, the biggest issue I have is not the plan. It's the baggage of the last party. And I am creating more and more distance between me and my predecessors and showing people the party's under new management.
Would you say that the woke movement that has significantly changed mentality and zeitgeist is one of the root causes for a dysfunctional social welfare system? Because also this idea that meritocracy matters has been more and more abandoned?
Yes, I think that we need to bring meritocracy back. This is one of the things that I talk about in my speeches. The standards are dropping. It's all part of the complacency, an assumption that we have so much money and so we can give it to other countries who need it more. We can, have a universal basic income. People don't need to work. That's simply not the case. But the thing about the woke movement is that it is derived from these hard left theories about oppressor, oppressed. Everybody has to be split into groups. Who's the oppressor in which group? Okay, we have black and white. White is the oppressor, black is the oppressed. We have men and women. Men are the oppressor, women are the oppressed. And then they start dividing people. They keep finding new ways of dividing people. And that then means when people are divided, everybody's trying to get something for themselves rather than think of the benefit of the whole. And we as conservatives want to bring back the whole, bring back that cohesion.
I would even go a step further and would say that the woke ideology has turned upside down fundamental aspirations and ideas of civilization. In a very simplistic manner, you could simply say successful used to be better and more desirable than unsuccessful. Rich used to be better than poor. Beautiful used to be better than ugly. And in a way, all these things have been turned around and led to into a competition. Who is the better victim? It's a victim competition, and that in a way takes away the aspiration to get better, to be successful, and to also contribute that the economy is prospering and that a social welfare system is not abused. So I think the woke movement could really be a Trojan horse that has implemented all these anti-civilization values that we have to deal with now.
Victimhood is the currency of the woke movement. The more victimhood you have, then the higher in the hierarchy you raise. So if you can tick lots of boxes about how you've been oppressed, and they use words like intersectionality and so on to mask that, this is how you get on in life. And then you find, everyday people thinking, I need to find a way to show that I'm a victim, that I've been oppressed. We saw a huge amount of social contagion in the last few years. It's dying down in the UK, thankfully, with lots of young people saying that they were trans. Many of them could not explain what it meant, but it was their way of saying, I too have a victimhood card that I can play. Many of them did not have gender dysphoria. It was a cool thing to do. If you allow victimhood to be the currency, everybody is going to want to be a victim. That is not my personality. It is not a culture I think we should allow to embed. It is not conservative. It's not in the DNA of our party. And it's something that even when we were in government, I was very vocal about it, and I've been stamping it out. Anything that promotes endless victimhood narratives is going to be toxic for the success of a country. People will want to be victims rather than want to be successful. We need people who are going to go out and start a business, take risks. If everybody's afraid, they're not going to do that. You get no growth, and so on.
You want winners. You want to encourage winners. And those who can't win because they face undeserved problems, those are the people a social welfare system need to help.
Exactly. That is how it should work. Those who really cannot help themselves. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're oppressed or they're victims. Okay. They just need assistance. And we need to make sure that we can make these arguments. You were asking me earlier about young people. One of the things that I think has gone wrong on the center-right is that we stopped making arguments. Instead, we just announce policy. This is this is what I want to do as the thinking right. Make sure you make the arguments about why things are going wrong before you announce the policy solution. Otherwise, people just hear noise.
But do you think that the woke movement, the cancel culture, has peaked, or is the worst yet to come?
I never want to say that something has peaked. You need to be very careful. It's complacency sometimes to assume something has peaked. The price of victory is eternal vigilance. We have to constantly watch out for this thing. I don't want to do a Francis Fukuyama about the end of wokery. Lots of people wrote articles about that. The seeds have been sown, and we see it across the institutions. Some people believe that it'll come back. I think with a left-wing government in the UK, they are bringing it back slowly. We have to be vigilant and we have to fight it.
In the context of anti-capitalism, anti-Semitism, woke authoritarianism, social media play a big role. What's your take on that?
So, like with all technology, I think social media was overestimated in the short term and underestimated in the long term. I am a cynical optimist. I think that we should look for the optimism in technology, but be very, very vigilant about how it can go wrong. Social media was supposed to be one of those things that would bring people together. Actually, it's ended up creating lots of different tribes, people in their echo chambers. I've got a campaign now to get under 16s off social media. It is creating a lot of anxiety and depression. It's destroying their sense of self.
But are you sure that that's going to work? I fear if you ban it for under 16 years old, it may be even more attractive for them. Wouldn't be the better solution to simply do what the United States did? Force TikTok to sell TikTok in Europe to non-Chinese shareholders in order to avoid that one of the most efficient tools of misinformation and polarization and racism and radicalism, that this tool is not in the hands of a totalitarian system and the Communist Party of China.
I think that solves one problem, but Meta is not owned by Chinese, and a lot of the issues, Facebook, that's not owned by the Chinese. I think that there is a huge problem with the way.
But isn't that a difference? I mean, both tools have their downsides, but one is on top of that, a surveillance tool of a totalitarian system.
The worst thing for me about social media is that it is designed to be addictive. Adults can control themselves, children cannot. We should not be allowing platforms to profit from the addiction of children. And it is almost impossible for parents to police. I'm a very tech-savvy parent, and I look at how hard it is. And I think that rather than creating lots of complicated rules and regulations, under 16, no. Over 16, yes. And you create a critical mass of children who get off social media. It's not going to solve everything. You'll have the VPNs and you'll have the parents who don't care. But let's get a critical mass of children off it. Have the children themselves say, I'm only on it because everybody else is on it. I don't want to be left out. Let's help them. Let's listen to young people.
Yeah, absolutely. But social media do not only do harm to young people, but also to adults.
Yeah.
And so again, the question, why shouldn't Europe follow, in that case, the US model?
I think that where a platform is owned by a totalitarian state, we should absolutely look at that. I don't. So I'm not disagreeing with you. I mean, even in this country, when we, as a Conservative government, saw there's something you will know all about. You know, the Telegraph being purchased by a state-owned organization. There were a lot of issues with that. We want a free speech. We want a free press. We want those values to be things that people understand. And if you just allow, it's part of the complacency I was talking about. You just allow totalitarian countries to do whatever they like, and you pretend that they are individuals within liberal democracies, you will run into problems.
I think it's a question of self-esteem of open societies. And if we let that happen, we shouldn't be surprised if the open society and the West are going to be weakened further.
Yes. I use the phrase that liberalism has been hacked. That people have worked out how to exploit the loopholes in liberalism. We need to wake up and become realists.
Okay, we agree on that. Now, another topic that gets more and more important and, in a way, emotional is artificial intelligence. On the one hand, we embrace the opportunities. On the other hand, the concerns are rising. I just returned from the United States. The land that always embraces progress and technology is deeply concerned. The fact that there are new products launched that are so uncontrollable that they cannot be launched to the wider public and only to certain enterprise clients in order to test the potential damage that it does. The Anthropic product Mythos is the recent example. It seems almost to be a turning point in the perception of artificial intelligence. And it seems to me that it also becomes part of election campaigns because the concerns of people are rising. Job losses and other topics are getting more and more urgent. So what is your take on that, and what should democracies do in order to make sure that the machines serve the people and not the other way around?
So as with all technology and new technological development, it is quite important for democracies to understand what it is they are dealing with. I don't favor the regulatory aspect of it because quite often the government is just too slow. They can't keep up with the speed of the technology companies. People do need to educate themselves.
If even those who create these tools don't understand how they develop, how should a regulator do that and find appropriate regulation?
Precisely. Yeah. But I think that the AI cat is out of the bag. All countries have access to it. All countries are developing it. The West needs to make sure that it maintains dominance in this area. I don't want to see a world where the AI is controlled by Iran or China or Russia. And that means making sure we can invest in it, but investing in a way where we are watching what's happening and can make sure we keep a lid on it. I am very worried about the long-term potential of AI, less so than the short-term, because we don't know where it's going. I do believe that we will find a way to manage it, but we need people to educate themselves and understand. In the short term, we can already see that entry-level jobs, especially again for young people, are disappearing. We are creating yet another gap where those who may have jobs will be fine, but other people are not getting entry-level jobs. We're seeing a massive drop in graduate recruitment at the moment. We have the lowest graduate recruitment on record. A lot of this is to do with AI. A lot of it is also to do with stupid government policy in the UK, increasing the tax on jobs, employers' national insurance, increasing wage thresholds in hospitality. The businesses are closing. Young people are losing their jobs. That's what's going to impact the election because they're going to be angry. We need to make sure that if something like AI is having an impact, government doesn't make it work with bad policies.
As a former engineer, so a tech expert, what is your prediction? Is AI in the long run going to destroy jobs and reduce the number of people who really contribute to the value creation of a society, and with that create unprecedented problems? Or could you imagine a scenario where AI creates completely new categories of jobs, and if we draw a line in 10 years, it was a positive?
I think that it will do the latter. I think it will create new categories of jobs, but it will create a lot of problems and disruption first. If we look at all technology, email, the internet, even social media, it starts off being very exciting and useful, and then eventually it becomes slop. I think, email eventually ended up, people stopped using it because of the spam. The internet now is full of loads of junk websites. The good stuff has been heavily outweighed by the bad. People thought social media would be great. It's ended up turning into another way for people to access porn rather than, enlighten us and increase our, intellectual stimulation. We're seeing it already with AI. There is a lot of AI slop out there. You go onto social media, you look at AI, and there's junk. And I think what will happen is people will start to crave authenticity. People will want to see the thing that's real. They will want products that are made by hand, by humans, because there is something about that AI simply cannot recreate. Even when it does do the thing, faster and better, there is something lost. And I think that soul, that passion that comes from the human element will be something that is in its own way becomes a way for people to get jobs and have jobs.
And another outlook, how high is the likelihood that in 10 years from now, AI will be dominated by open societies, by America, by Europe, or rather by totalitarian societies?
That is a very, very hard prediction to make. I'm worried that the domination will happen with totalitarian societies because they have so much control. It's why I want to see us investing in AI in this country. But in order to do that, we need to have cheap energy. Totalitarian countries have figured out how to get cheap energy. Our government, our Labour government, is creating expensive energy. We had some bad policies as Conservatives, which I've junked. Labour has tripled down on everything that wasn't working. If you have expensive energy, you are not going to be dominant in AI. You're basically saying, thank you, Iran. Thank you, China. Thank you, Russia. Please go and dominate the sector for us. We're not interested. And that is why I say we need this economic revolution. We need to get Britain working. We need a stronger economy. Because if we have those things, then we will be able to make sure that we can stay ahead and allow open, democracies, open societies to be the ones that can shape the future, not just of technology, but the future of the world as a whole.
That leads me to a third and last prediction I try to get from you. It is about the West, or the open society model, centrist democracies. It seems that we are in a very existential crisis all around the world. We know the factors, internal issues, external threats. The model is seriously challenged, and you could say most of the centrist societies are rather stumbling, whereas a lot of autocratic societies are achieving pretty successfully their goals. What is your prediction in 10 years? Was that what we experience now, the healthy warning call that we needed in order to turn around and strengthen not only our values, but also improve our performance and deliver on our promises? And in 10 years, we will be better off? Or is it the beginning of the end of the open society?
So I don't think it is the end of the open society, but we are experiencing significant challenges. I don't like to predict the future. The future is not yet written, but I think we need to focus on how do we make sure that we don't lose open societies. I worry about younger people wanting dictatorship because they think that that's the thing that's going to fix everything. People who have forgotten the lessons of history. This is why the historical literacy is so important. There are a lot of lessons that we can learn from the past. This is why I'm very suspicious of revolution just done on the streets. If we want an economic revolution, let's do it with regulation, and sensible policies rather than getting people out, lynch mobs, setting fire to everything. That never works. But liberal societies, if they're going to survive, these open societies, if they're going to survive, they need to move beyond what everybody calls centrism. I think there is this idea that just woolly centrism, not rooted in values, is going to solve things. Talk about the things that you believe in rather than just centrism. Centrism, in my view, as a word, does not mean anything if you're not talking about strong but light regulation. If you're not talking about limited government and free markets, if you're not talking about strong defense and a strong economy, and you're just talking about centrism, it doesn't doesn't mean anything. That's why I say I'm on the right, and this is what I believe in. Personal responsibility, citizenship, believing in a country, believing in where you're from, rather than just everywhere is great, a cultural relativism where there's no superior culture. If you start, accepting those things, then your centrism will fail. I am someone who is on the right because I believe that right-wing values are critical and important, but they need to be done thoughtfully, moderately, not this sort of hard right, authoritarian, totalitarian manner. That will fail. But talk about the values specifically. What is it that's going to work? How is it going to work? And I think that that's the way that you preserve the open societies that you were talking about.
My last question, let's assume you get to power and into a political role where you really can change things. What would be the one thing that is most dear to your heart that you really want to achieve and that people should associate with you and your leadership forever?
Matthias, this is a very difficult question. I have 20 things which
you can only pick one. Sorry,
I have to narrow it down. What is the one thing? So I think it's not my favorite thing. My favorite thing would probably be around, dealing with the culture and integration issue. That's the thing that I would love to do. But I think that the thing that would make the biggest difference right now is us recreating the entrepreneurial middle class. And I know this sounds very complicated, but the middle class in this country has become very bureaucratic. Lots of people relying on government. It's one of the reasons why our productivity is so low and we're getting poorer. We need to unleash those people who start businesses, who create value. Once upon a time, the middle class was people who, you could see the value they were creating. They're farmers, they're growing food, they're building things. Now the middle class is compliance, living off government regulation. The government has set up a new scheme. That's what's really killing our country. If there was one thing I could do, if you said, Kemi, you can only do one thing, you're in government, you have 1 week, what's the one thing you could do? That's where I would start, because that allows a lot of people to get involved and really creates the leverage that would help change society. But the thing that I really want to do is give this country back its confidence. We're losing our confidence. I see it, whether it's in this Iran war, the way we relate to other countries internationally, how we talk about ourselves, dealing with immigration, we're losing our confidence. We are a strong, great country. We should be confident about it. And that's why I'm always talking about a stronger country. We have to get that confidence back. And some of that needs to be dealt with the fragmentation around our culture, around integration, the balkanization of British society, the separatism. It's destroying our confidence. And I want us to bring that back.
Kemi, thank you very much for the conversation.
Thank you.